Hello and welcome to the Columbus Backstage Pass Podcast. I'm your host, Dave the Arena Dude, giving you a VIP credential and taking you backstage to get the inside scoop on all the cool things happening right here in Columbus. And we have a very special episode today. Putting a guy on camera who maybe was stepping away, taking some time off the golf course to join us today. Local sports legend, Clay Hall. Clay, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I haven't figured out this so-called retirement thing, but I'm working on it.
I saw a tweet. You're very active on Twitter and a great follow. You were out with some other TV sports folks here having some fun with Jared, and well, talk a little about what you're up to there.
Yeah, Jared, so nice. He set the foursome up and invited me kind of as a retirement thing, and yeah, you got a lot of ball scores in that group right there. But Jared, who's multi-talented, has gone from sports to news. And Joe Nugent, who by the way, our channel interviewed him first, but at that point we didn't have an opening. And then four latched on to Joe. And very proud of Dave Holmes, who's coming over to join ABC6 as the sports director. And really good golfer, great guy. I'm thrilled for him, trying to support all of his efforts. And, you know, we just, after 3 or 4 holes, you just loosen up. You have a great time. You tell stories. Occasionally, you might have a birdie putt. Not for me, but those guys. I'm probably I got to tell you, David, my best shot was my tee shot on 1, and it kind of went down from there. I was in the short grass. Getting a little cocky. But at 67, you learn quickly. You just don't hit the ball as far as you used to hit it. So I texted Jared yesterday. I said, incredible time. Let's do it again. Great dudes. And so that's my retirement thing.
Yeah, it's cool you get to do that. I actually got to hit some golf balls with Jared recently at the Ohio Stadium when we had the upper deck golf event there.
Yeah,
and he's got a good swing, I can tell you that. Excellent.
He is like my other good buddy Anthony Rothman, who is boringly efficient. I mean, and Jared's come a long way. I played in that Memorial Tournament Media Day, and he's an A player now. I mean, he shot 80, 81. So he is accomplished now. And I was very impressed watching him. I was like, let's just shut me down and I'll follow you. I'll be your caddy, blah, blah, blah. So at any rate, great time. We had a brat. Maybe we had an adult beverage. I don't remember.
Hey, and really cool that you could connect with Dave Holmes, because I think a lot of the community was kind of a surprise to see him leaving, and then happy to see him back, and a great guy. And it's really cool that you can kind of connect with him and you know, again, welcome. I feel like it's nice that you were able to like welcome him to the position.
No question about it. Yeah, there's a lot of backstory there, but I'm thrilled. I think he is excited to start a new journey at our place. And as I told him, I came there in 95. I found a home. I hope he does too. And again, this football fever thing.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, it became something, especially in those early days. Excuse me. In 95, when I came there, all the games, almost every game was on ABC6. And so we had this captive audience on a pregame show. We did a postgame show, which is where the show really took off, because we would be live in that interview room, getting the comments of the head coach, etc. And that thing took off, much in part to Anthony Rothman, who was a heck of a studio presence, along with the guy who is sort of unforgettable in Demetrius Stanley. And I used to call them the best anchor team in this market. And I would just run around, get interviews. That show was so much fun and really became, I think, the signature for the station. and I hope in some way was part of our rise through the market in those days, because these captive audiences, Dave, as you know, these ratings are incredible. And so it has become a little bit different in the last few years because, Fox is involved, Big Ten Network is involved. And so ABC6 doesn't quite have the monopoly that we used to have. But that show is where I became known. That show enabled me to work there for 29 years with no hair. And, at 35, I tell people I was marginally attractive. But as the years go by, and I love, frankly, going on the road, because you take 3 or 4 guys, girls as well now, and it felt like we were an elite fighting force. They would drop us into a market maybe we've never been, and we would have to produce a show, produce television, produce memorable moments. And I love the road games because you're getting a lot of grief once they find out who you're covering.
Yeah, sure.
And so, at any rate, that thing I will miss till they, get rid of me. Again, that it just meant so much, and my relationship with the people who've worked on that show, and certainly not me, but we made that thing happen. And Dave will keep it going this year, and I'm so excited for he and Kellyanne Stitz.
It's a part of the fabric of Columbus community, right? Which I think is the key to, success for you over the years is it's not just, it's not just a talking head sports show. It's something that, especially, when you talk about those early days, it was kind of groundbreaking in what it was able to do. And the way that it meant so much to Columbus when it's hyper local, and it's that connection, and it's the guy that you see out at the game, and it's people that you trust who know the sport inside and out. And I just think that's what you were able to succeed so well in is being more than just a piped in program. It's actually being part of the fabric of what makes Columbus.
Well, that means the world to me that you say that. We felt like as the years went on, it did become kind of destination viewing. And as you rub shoulders with Buckeye fans at home or away, they always would, they were so appreciative of the coverage, and it just, it meant so much. And in the early days when, we prided ourselves on the pregame shows simply because we were able to show the band and the ramp entrance. Yeah. And there would be 80-year-old women who would just hug you because you showed that part of it. And that changed when Ohio State said you can't use Buckeye. And so Anthony came up with the football fever. And at that point, we were kicked out of the stadium because the Big Ten Network had exclusive rights to the venue. And I said, I don't need to be in the stadium to do the show, but will you give me one live camera up top? Because this has become our signature. He's like, yeah, well, I'll run it up the pole. I'll get back to you. He called me back in a week. No, can't do it. 2 weeks later, they were doing it. And I called him back and I said, that's the last free idea you will ever get. And I hold a grudge to this day, because when the Big Ten Network stuck out their hand and said, oh, can you give us some video? Can help us get on the air? It'll benefit everyone. And we did. And I reminded them of that, but it didn't seem to matter.
Yeah,
because we know, as you know, you're either a rights holder or you're kind of nothing. So we've had to reinvent ourselves and do a lot of other things. But I think the post games, I think the show still lives. hey, we've got hats to prove it. So come on. And this is the one that's probably 29 years old because I've cut the grass or played golf in 100 years. But I think this will go into the grave with me.
You said, the words 29 years, and I think that's boy, you started 29 years ago at WSYX and doing this whole thing, and so what is it that you think you'll miss the most about it?
Well, we had a moment there halfway in when our management sort of what Anthony and I call blew up sports. And we went from 6.5 people down to, I became the last man standing here in the last few years. And so we weren't doing 24/7 sports. We weren't doing every ball score. And Anthony used to say, Clay, there's a silver lining in everything. And what it enabled us to do that I didn't have to do like the other stations and do every voiceover on the Reds or the Indians or whatever. And when Anthony left and went full-time radio, I was like, and they made me shoot, which I had never done in this business. And most sports people, they're shooting their own video at 23 years old.
Right. Yeah.
and so I said, well, I thought, I have a family. I had 3 boys. And I said to them, you're not taking my spot. You are not. I will, they want, in this new era, they want content providers. And I said, at one point I was doing 3 separate stories, 3 separate packages a day. And at one point they finally came to me, one of the news director's assistants, all right, Clay, back it down. Two is fine. But my mantra for the last few years has been one of a kind content, because I can get in the car. I am not bound by the run of the mill sports. And so I want a story that nobody else has. And I would get in the car and drive through a snowstorm to Cleveland to talk to Ted Ginn Jr. There's just been many times when I felt like I was a little bit ahead of the crowd because I'm covering stuff that I think you're interested in. And so it's not a revolutionary concept.
Yeah, sure.
But it inspired me every day to go do something Buckeye related or whatever it was. And that's why you really have to, I think the most valuable sports person, news as well, is somebody who brings an idea to the table that turns that day. Don't tell me you're going to do a series next month on whatever. No, we got to feed the black today. We got to cover up the black and air something that can turn. And that's a challenge. And that's something that challenged me every day in the last 5 to 10 years.
It's that creativity just had to be exciting, because at some points, like you said, you're just reporting scores, but then that opportunity not to just be part of the sports world, but to be and I'll use the word content creator, right? But you were creating compelling content, and getting to, get out there and goodness, like you said, be ahead of the pack in a lot of ways. That had to be a real fun to get to stretch those muscles.
Well, and that's one of the things that I came up with. One of the things you're always trying to do as that head football coach at Ohio State changes hands. So Urban comes in, and I see on Twitter that his daughter Gigi is a national collegiate wakeboarding champion. And I called Shelley, who was connected with Maria Durant, and Gigi was early on, but I knew she was like spending the summers here. So through Shelley, I got to Gigi, we talked. I said, I would love to do this with you. I said, do you have a boat? Can we make this happen? She goes, absolutely, whatever. And as Urban told me later, she is the daredevil in the family. So we set this up, we get in the boat, and before we go, I said, Gigi, I really haven't met your dad yet. This was in the summer anyway. And I said, don't go crazy out here. Don't be flipping 23 times. I said, if you get hurt, I'm a dead man. So she proceeded to do all of that. We aired 2 pieces on that particular day. And Coach Meyer called the station the next day and he said, I want those stories on my iPad and I want them today. And they're like, Clay. And I said, we can work that out. And so I think between that and, I met him for the first time, and it was 12:54. I'll never forget this. And I walked in, and Jerry Emig, his handler, who's still there,
yep.
and just one of the greats in this business. And he said, Coach, Clay, and he just wanted to have a couple minutes or whatever. And Urban doesn't even look at me. He looks over at Jerry and he says, Jerry, I work out every day at 1:00. And I had waited like a couple of months to let him get assimilated, whatever. And I looked at him with this disgust. And I said, so you got 6 minutes? And he goes, you got 6 minutes, go. So I'm like, I'm on the spot now. What is going to, because the head coach at Ohio State, does he really need Clay Hall? He needs ESPN. He might need Fox. He might, whatever. But you got to have that relationship. And so I pulled out my wallet, thinking fast here, because he said something about it. He goes, where's your staff? I always see you shooting by yourself. And I said, this is my staff. And I pulled out, I may still have it. I pulled out this picture of my family.
Okay, there it is. Yeah.
I said, this is my staff. And this kid here, the oldest kid, he works right down the hall from you, and you ought to go say hi. And from that point on, I had him. And we sat there for, 30 minutes, whatever. And I said something about GG, and he gave me a sound bite. And at any rate, he has been somebody that even to this day, if I call and ask for a comment on such and such, he'll do it. And he'll do the Zoom, the whole thing. And he's probably the person who I have the closest sort of personal relationship with a coach of that status or notoriety. So he was good to me, and I think I was good to him. But that was one of those stories, one of a kind, because people got, how did you know what me and I, and you just got to do your homework and work hard. And there's so many people who do that on a daily basis.
Family meant so much to Urban, and what was neat is I have a son. Both my sons went to Bishop Watterson.
Yeah,
and of course Urban's son went to Watterson. And what I thought was so cool that people didn't really know is that on the Friday night football games, regardless of the huge game that he was playing on Saturday, he would be there on the sidelines supporting his family. And I just thought that was so cool that, it's not easy to go out in Columbus when you're Urban Meyer and stand on a Friday night football sideline and not get bombarded by people, even just to even walk in and out. But he was there time and time again to support his family. And I saw, you would see the way that he interacted with his family, and it just gave me a whole new appreciation for him.
David, I've been to a couple of those games, 3 or 4, when he was, as you say, and he struck a pose one time under the goalpost.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of Bear Bryant, because I had covered the SEC early on in my career. And it's just, it's one of those pictures that it just stands the test of time. He kind of leaned up against the post. The only thing he was missing was the houndstooth hat. So, but you're right. And he's so devoted. That's for sure. And I saw, he came, he did the spring game, and I saw him the night before. He still did my little thing on social media for me. And so and his son, by the way, is now married. And so it was great to kind of come full circle there.
You started, at SYX, we said 29 years ago. I moved to the Columbus market in 97, but it was a period where there were not arenas in Columbus. Yeah, you would go
Yeah,
see, you'd go see the Chill play, and had a
yeah,
blast
yeah,
doing that. But I remember one of my first days working in radio, I was working at QFM 96 at the time, and my boss pulled me in and he said, "Hey, we're going to try to support this initiative to, bring arenas to Columbus because we need, concerts and fun stuff." And
yeah,
I really hadn't thought about the fact that, there was the amphitheater at the time, but and St. John Arena, which was a lot of good memories there for sure. But
yeah.
this drive to have, and all of a sudden, two arenas get built in Columbus within a 2-year window, and it changed the landscape of Columbus. And I know, you were a big part of that and spent a lot of time in the arenas over the years.
Yeah, it's I'm so proud of my city, of our city, because sorry about that.
You're good.
Because now that row of Lower.com Field, Huntington Park, Nationwide Arena, and I know major markets have 3 or 4 of those, but for Columbus and where we've come, and I do want to give a lot of credit, as you said, to that initiative and the Greater Columbus Sports Commission,
Yeah.
and Linda Logan, because once those got built, she put the events in there, and that has really produced a lot of revenue for this city. I had my brother-in-law was here last week seeing my mother-in-law, and we had gone to the Clipper game, which I hadn't been to as a sit in the stands kind of guy for forever. And on the way home, I said, "See, Nationwide's there," and he could see that coming in. And then Huntington, I said, "We got to go by Lower.com Field. That's $314 million." And David, as you know, that is not only soccer specific, but it's globally kind of respected because of what was done there in MLS, and the titles didn't hurt either. But because it takes you, I have not seen European soccer in person, but that's what it reminds me of. And I think it's globally, as I say, like thumbs up. So I think between those three, that's pretty neat. And as you say, the landscape has changed so drastically since the mid 90s, when it was the Shoe, and, even the Crew in 96 started there.
Yeah.
We didn't have a hockey team. The Clippers were at Cooper Stadium, which was going downhill a bit. So I think we're cutting edge. I think we're cool now. And with everything that is going on here, it's Columbus is in its glory days, man.
Absolutely, and it's been great to see the evolution of the city. I wonder if you could, if you had maybe a favorite memory or a game that you were at, or even a concert at each from the Schottenstein Center and Nationwide Arena.
Well, the first playoff game way back when Nash they were taking on the Red Wings. They got skunked in that series, but I remember a goal. I think it was his in Nationwide, when the roof came off.
I do,
because everybody associated with the team was telling us neophytes to hockey, "Hey, when we get to the playoffs, when we do this, when we do that, you're going to see the fervor." And George Matthews, who I love to this day, and we put a GoPro on him when he was doing the radio before Bob McElligott. And he came out of his chair, literally it was like this. It was some of the best video I have ever seen. We had a mic'd up, we had 2 GoPros. It was just, and George was a saint. I loved him. I'm sorry he's not still here. Bob has done a great job of following him. The shot, it probably that Matt Sylvester 3 against Illinois.
Yeah, we hear that a bit. Yeah.
I have seen concerts there, none really I have those sports moments more than I have musical moments.
Yeah, sure.
And I have one other little story, if you don't mind.
Oh, please.
Revolves around Ohio State, Michigan, and it was up there. And so it's on Friday, and we're always looking for a little content, a little slice of Americana. How are they feeling about the game? And I found the Barber of Ann Arbor a little bit later, but we were walking around and we passed one of the buildings, and it said something about a political seminar. And we were just walking by, and it said something about Gerald Ford. And I said, hang on, Mike, we gotta. So we went, kind of made our way into the backstage, and we basically talked ourselves into this thing. And they said, you're legitimate. We showed the camera our credentials. And so, yeah, just go stand. Here's the platform. After he finishes, there'll be a Q&A. So we did. Long story short, they get to me and they say, identify yourself. Clay Hall, sports director, ABC6 in Columbus, Ohio. And the room went, like, what is he going to ask? And so Gerald Ford was an All-American center and linebacker at Michigan. In 32 and 33, they won the national championship. In 34, they were not quite as fortunate. So we were talking about the game, and I said, Mr. President, with all due respect, what happened in 1934? And this man proceeded to recite chapter and verse of Ohio did this, and they just were so great that day, and we just didn't get it done. And that's one of my, and so we've wrapped up, thanked him. We edited this thing, and we didn't even I didn't want to tell the station. I didn't want them to get their hopes up or whatever. We sent the piece back. It ran on the air, and my immediate boss called me within a minute and said, that's the greatest damn thing I've ever seen. And I looked at Mike Jones, and Mike Jones, by the way, that place doesn't run without Mike Jones. And I said, I think I can retire now. And I'm like 35. I'm like 35. I was like, it doesn't get any better than that. So I just had to throw that out because it was one of those.
Oh, that's great. What a cool memory. I had no idea. That was very cool. Hey, so
Yeah.
do you mind if I talk to you a little bit about, your career? I want, you started off, Columbus, obviously going to high school here at Upper Arlington High School before you headed off to Mississippi State. What took you to Mississippi State University?
Well, my dad, career John Deere guy, moved up the chain really quickly, and he was transferred a lot. We were always moving, always the new kid, had to kind of make it happen, improvise, adapt, overcome, etc. My parents grew up in a small Mississippi town right across the street from one another. Most of my relatives were from the South. They always thought we talked funny because they have this crazy accent. I would ask my mom, what did my cousin just say? I don't. And so we moved to Columbus. I was in high school, and that's tough when you, the last couple of years, I was like, Ohio State. And I was like, I'm a small town kid. That place, that scares the hell out of me. Anyway, so my dad went to Mississippi State on the GI Bill. I didn't have to pay any out-of-state tuition. I said, I'm just going to go down there for a semester, see, culture shock, whatever. I ended up loving it. I found a direction. I found who I was. The people there, black, white, just are so unbelievably friendly. It's very much like the Midwest in that sense. And I went to school there. I stayed. I had 2 newspaper jobs when I got out of college, never intending. I got into TV completely by accident. And I'm glad it worked out. It's a shame. I used to write things that are longer than 4 paragraphs, but you don't really do that in TV too much. But at any rate, so I still, I tell people when I speak that I felt like I've lived this life in Columbus and this life, in the South. And it's weird because there's little pieces of all of that I still have in me. I watched Mississippi State baseball because that was the only thing we were good at for so long. And now I can watch that on ESPN Plus, along with my son's lacrosse team. He's the associate head coach at Lafayette University. So that's crazy. See, we moved from Jackson, Mississippi to Columbus, and somebody gave my son a lacrosse stick, and now he's making a living at it. He was
just how it happens, right?
He was 6 years old, and at any rate, he became attached to the game. And so anyway, I digress. That son and his wife, who was an OBGYN, just gave us our first grandparents. And if I talk about that very much, I'll get a little too emotional. But it's
that's awesome.
It's twin girls.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So David, I kind of got out of the racket because you've got on that end twin girls at 7 months, and my parents who are 92 years old and still kicking.
Good for you.
And so it just became time to and everybody says this, but when you work those 16-hour days in the fall and you feel like you're losing part of you're giving everything you got. And it was just now I'm able to kind of do and give back. And but I'm still trying to figure out retirement, because when you've been going 90 miles an hour for 30 plus years and then you just cold turkey it's bizarre. And I mean, I'm still getting up at 7:30 in the morning. What am I doing? I don't get
it. Your first TV gig was in Columbus, but it was not Columbus, Ohio, right?
Columbus, Mississippi, which is 20 miles from, as they call it, Start Vegas, the home of the Bulldogs. And it was so cool because we would cover Mississippi State, Ole Miss, and Alabama was only 60 miles away. And everybody wanted to talk to Bear Bryant and see what he was up to. And, I'm to some of your viewers and listeners are going to go like, gosh, this guy is old. But we would go over there and go to the weekly presser, and he would do TV and newspaper, radio separately. And so you would sit in this impressive office, single file, and there would be like 8 of us, 10 of us maybe. And Birmingham would go first. They would get their 3 questions. They would leave. You moved up a chair. So Columbus, Mississippi is in the rear.
Yeah, I bet.
So, and by the time you get to him, you're like, what? I got no questions. What? Everybody asked the good stuff. And I introduced myself, and Coach Bryant said, "Oh, do you still have the lights on over there?" Because you have to go through Columbus to play Mississippi State. And I said, "Yeah, we're still kicking." And so he kind of gave me a break there. But I wrote a column when I was at the newspaper about that experience and just sweating bullets. And I was like, this would be like interviewing Woody in Columbus. It just, and so anyway, great moments. And when I covered the Liberty Bowl, his last game, and then he died shortly thereafter. And you would have thought a president or a member of the royal family had passed. It was, Tuscaloosa was inundated with millions.
Yeah.
Oh, like, yeah.
After that little run in Mississippi, you spent about a decade plus in Jackson before in June of '95 you ended up back in Columbus, Ohio. at WSYX and TTE. And so how were you able to make that jump back from Jackson, and what was it like coming back to Columbus?
It was so cool. I have gotten to know Reese Davis over the years, and occasionally we will stop by because we're sort of sister people, ABC and ESPN. Their talent will sometimes do interviews with locals like me. And he looked at me, Columbus. He said, I was going to be interviewed in Columbus. I was right down the street at the Wendy's on, I said, yeah, quarter of a mile. And he said, I got a call. I ate lunch and I was driving to the station to be interviewed, and ESPN called me and said, don't take the interview. We're going to hire you. He's like, what? And he got the gig. And he said, I've always wondered who got the job. And I said, Reese, I think that was me. And we had this moment. And so that's kind of our little thing together. And I said, Reese, I stayed there 29 years, had an incredible run there, and things worked out for you just fine. But that was part of starting there and inheriting staff. And those were the glory days. Like I said, we had 3 on-air people. We had 2 producers. We had kind of a / news sports photog. And it just, I said when I came, I just wanted to carve out a niche in Columbus sports. And I knew that was going to be a major challenge because you had a CBS affiliate, kind of this legacy station. And I was like, how are we going to be better? How are we going to? And we started that show. And as I tell people, we won some awards, some Emmys, some this and that. And I said, okay, I finally got them out of my head. And I've told Dom Tiberi that story.
Yeah.
Because he had Dom and he had Paul Spahn, the guy they call Moose, and did a lot of stuff behind the scenes that accelerated their product. And so they made me a lot better. And so, and now I love on Dom, certainly after the passing of his daughter. And I used to be so competitive and feisty around him, and now I just hug him. So that too has come full circle.
If you could go back to that first day that you're sports director at SYX and whisper something in your ear, tell your younger self, hey, here's a little piece of advice that's going to help you out. What are you telling yourself?
You belong. And it's just, a lot of people, struggle with that, and to me, Columbus was almost like New York, because I'm coming from Jackson, Mississippi, market 90 up to market 30, 32, a place I went to high school. And I felt a little bit of pressure. And I would say things doing the highlights, and that dog will hunt, and people are like, what does that mean? And it's like, I forgot that the sensibilities and things are so different, and they, half the population hunts in the South, not so much here. And they're like, that dog will hunt. Jeff Logan will say occasionally, the former Ohio State running back, put the dogs in the truck, the hunt is over, or something like that. And so he gets it, but it's just, learning where you are and adapting. And as I say, the football fever allowed me to feed my kids, house them, and even send them to college. So, David, I'm so appreciative of that place. Tony D'Angelo's the GM. I got to shout out some of these folks. Nicole Hoganson and Dave Holmes is the next great. Dave Holmes won a national contest at ESPN. The kid has the chops.
We're excited to see what he's got. But how does your family feel about this? Your family feel good about you? You've mentioned them quite a bit here, and how do they feel about you being home a little bit more?
Yeah, well, two of them live here. That none of my kids are young anymore. Our oldest is 36. He's a lacrosse coach. The second one, Parker Hall, was named after an Ole Miss All-American running back, which people in Mississippi didn't understand because they knew I went to Mississippi State, but I loved the name. and Eli was named after Eli Manning, another homage to the South, etc. He works for Orvis, a fly fishing company. Parker works for Dick's, moving up the chain in sporting goods, and Judd's a lacrosse coach. So none of them worked for John Deere, which my dad still berates me about because it's such a great Fortune 500 company. And I'm just like, Dad, that's not their thing. But I do have some John Deere products. I will tell you that. But yeah, I mean, it's awesome when I can play golf with my three sons, as I call them. And so, and I think more of it is just reconnecting with my wife, who is a tough, hard-nosed, worker herself, and understands hard work and never begrudged those 12 and 16-hour days, though it left her alone a lot.
Yeah.
And so that's the best part, I think, to see them on a regular basis. And my wife keeps that road hot to Easton, PA, the home of the grandkids. So I just went over there 10 days ago. It was the second time I'd seen the girls. And now I feel like we're linked. We are tight. We have a connection. Those girls, I know once I left, really missed me. I was only there for 2.5 days. Judd's last season-ending lacrosse game was that weekend, so I got the twofer. But it's interesting when you have a 36-year-old son and he has kids now. So family is what it's all about. And so I'm blessed.
Oh, that's
David,
great.
I'm blessed.
So you've probably knocked everything off the honeydew list by now. And what's next? Other than the golf course, is there anything that you're like looking forward to or have on your agenda?
Well, I took care of. I transplanted forsythia last week. I transplanted a cedar thing yesterday in the downpour. And today I have 3 plants out front that I got to do. She and I both, Pat, we love digging in the dirt. We like landscaping. We like that stuff. We're just that people. My dad was a farmer at 16, 17 years old. So I come by it honestly, and Pat's family as well. She's from California. How we got together here is crazy. She was 13. I was 15. I was in a church youth group. We went to visit them. We knocked on the door, and I saw this girl in the back. They had a long hall, and I saw her in the back of the home, and I was smitten. And literally, we would fly across country to see each other until we were married in 82. So it's now 40, 18, 20, 42 years, 42, I think. Yeah. At any rate, so she's been a trooper, worked in the medical field for a long time, and is now a teacher's aide and will not stop working. And I'm like, well, you're going to miss a lot of great road trips. What are you doing? She's like, well, when I get to the Medicare age, we'll consider it. But at any rate,
that's great though. That's that time together and being able to kind of reconnect. I look forward to that with my very patient wife as well, and all our evening events at the arenas. Before we wrap this up, I just wanted to kind of ask you, what do you think is next for Columbus? Obviously there's been so much growth in this city over the past 20 years from an arena standpoint, a sports from so many different ways, and there's still a lot of room to grow. So what do you think is next
Boy,
for Columbus?
that is a tremendous question. First thing that came to mind was the hockey stadium series and the fact that we finally got that going, which is going to be very cool. The other thing I think about, and I've heard just people, throwing stuff against the wall. Would they ever dome the shoe? Would the shoe ever be redone? It's a national historic whatever. Because Gene Smith, the outgoing AD, is like, oh, if we have a playoff game here, we might have to move it to Indy to be indoors. I don't know about that. I think, we want Alabama to come up here and freeze their tails off. So the soccer is now in an incredible spot. We have a thriving minor league team. I think the Stanley Cup, and hopefully that happens in my lifetime, and I'm almost 67, but new direction is coming, new general manager. It's been pockets of success along the way in the 20-something years, but what I am most surprised at, I guess, is the devotion of those fans in this most recent season when they were not good. And they've been not good a bunch, but sellout after sellout after sellout. And this town is waiting to explode if we ever had a team that could challenge. And I don't know if that could happen. David, you might have more grandiose ideas along that line. I'd love to hear them. But I'll be cheering. I'll be cheering our town. No question about that.
You've been a great supporter of Columbus for so long, and on a personal note, let me thank you, because about 15 years ago, when I was doing a radio show, I was a morning show guy on the Brew at 105.7 and doing a Red Man's Roadhouse. Before my sales team shut it down, as sales folks tend to do when they get there's no money in it for them.
Right.
You were kind enough to do a daily sports report for me, and it was that thing of where you'd call in every morning and we would do the sports news you need to know. And it was great because it was that time it was, again, kind of like you said, it wasn't a rundown of all the scores. It was, what's the story everybody at work's going to be talking about today? So whether you were a big sports fan or not, it was kind of enough, it was just enough for that person who is maybe a casual sports fan to kind of get, hey, here's the big news that you need to know today, and you were a part of that. And it was, again, it was a limited run. My time there at the Brew was just a couple years, but again, you were part of that for a while, and I do appreciate that.
Well, that probably was my fault, but no, I do. What year was that? Do you recall?
Oh boy, that would have been maybe 2008, 2007, 2008.
Okay, during the trestle train. Okay, yeah. And I tell people, by the way, David, I tell every intern, start in radio. Yeah. You learn to ad lib. You learn to just carry it by yourself, sometimes for hours on end. And I said, every time somebody would ask me to be on the radio, I would get nervous. And that night before, I would write down 1,000 things because I just wanted to have them handy. And again, I think that is such a terrific skill. I would say don't do. I mean, print was different in 70, whatever. Yeah. But anyway, folks like yourself who have come from that background, I think are extremely talented. My hat's off to you.
20 years of radio, and I've been out of it for as long as I've been at the arenas, which is almost 15 years, and I still wake up with nightmares of dead air. Right. So,
David, that is so. Yeah. And I told a buddy from way back, I said, when does it wear off when you are, the night before the next day and you're thinking of the plan and this is what we're going to do and this is how we're going to execute it. And then I catch myself and go, Clay, the only thing you got to worry about is cutting the grass. And it's just, that foursome, we did have a blast, but we did talk about some of that stuff and some of the pressure that you feel. And as you said, filling the air and having content that's compelling and day after day after day. So I feel you, brother.
On that note, we're going to wrap things up. But if people want to follow along, you're still sharing some insights and thoughts occasionally on Twitter. Is that the best place for people to kind of follow along these days?
Yeah, I guess I'm still addicted to it. I'm on Instagram, Clayton W. Hall. Reach out if you got something to holler. Who knows? I might buy a camera, start my own little thing. What I'd really like to do, I told my mom this week, I want to be a pitch man for Scott's Fertilizer because I'm such a great client and my yard looks so damn good. I think I'm invested and it could work.
As a guy who always I always feel good about my yard in May, and then as soon as June and July, those brown spots roll out, and
right.
There's times you got the time to take care of it now. So good luck with that. I
Right. That's it.
On that note, we're gonna wrap things up. Thanks, Clay. Really appreciate your time here today and sharing your memories, and again, everything you did for Columbus.
Oh, thank you, David. It's great to be with you.
And a big thanks to everybody for listening to this episode of the Columbus Backstage Pass Podcast. Hey, you want to know what shows are coming up at the arenas? We didn't really get a chance to talk too much about it. Our next episode will be a preview of Summer Fun, but you can find all the details on all the shows at schottensteincenter.com or nationwidearena.com. Remember to like and subscribe if you like what you heard today. In the meantime, I'm Dave the Arena Dude. Thanks for listening.